Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down the top 15 best thrash metal bands not in the American Big Four. Of course, the American Big Four of thrash metal are Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax. All great bands, right? Metallica, one of my all-time favorite groups, but, you know, when it comes down to it, there are so many great thrash metal bands that don't get talked about as much compared to the bands in the Big Four of the American thrash metal scene, so with that in mind here, this is a list counting down, bands that are not in that Big Four. So with that in mind, let's get started here with my number 15. Number 15, let's go with Municipal Waste. They're a band that took me a while to get into, honestly, but ultimately what gravitated me towards them was the fact that they're just a fun band to listen to. They've even been described by the media as, party thrash, which I think is pretty fair, right? Definitely one of the best 21st century crossover thrash acts, in my opinion, right? They formed in 2001 and have not looked back since, influenced by, bands like Suicidal Tendencies, Slayer, Nuclear Assault, and more. Their material is short and to the point, but it's super heavy, very thrashy, and just a blast to listen to. Number 14, let's go with a pretty underrated pick here. I'm going to go with Holy Moses. They're one of the first German thrash metal bands, and a very early example of extreme metal as well. I think they're definitely overlooked in the grand scheme of things, fronted by Sabina Klassen, who has been the band's only consistent member throughout their catalog, right? They've been just a revolving door of musicians coming in and out, but Sabina Klassen, an amazing vocalist who has been there since the beginning, and has been, the only constant in their discography. So, since their formation, they've released 12 studio albums, including their most recent, Invisible Queen, which is currently one of my favorite thrash metal releases of 2023 so far. At the end of the year, I'll count out my favorite thrash albums of, 2023, but this one, as it stands right now, will be pretty high up on the list. So with that in mind, my number 14 here, have to go with Holy Moses. This is a list not including the Big Four of American thrash metal, but I didn't say anything about the Big Four of Teutonic thrash, so with that in mind, coming in at number 13 here, I'm going to go with Tankard, another fun band to listen to, and, contrary to some of the other bands in the Teutonic thrash Big Four, their lyricism is more lighthearted and less serious, which has caused, some people to consider them to be too gimmicky, but in my opinion, musicianship speaks for itself, and I think they're a very consistent band throughout their catalog and are still killing it now over 40 years later, with the band celebrating their 40th anniversary in 2022. So I think definitely most underrated out of the Teutonic thrash Big Four, but fantastic group in my opinion and belong on the list here. Coming in at number 13, I'm going to go with Tankard. Next, number 12, I'm going to go with Voivod. They're a band with very diverse and unique range in my opinion, right? Initially they were more of a speed metal band before evolving into, a more thrash metal sound and eventually incorporating elements of progressive metal as well. So I think the best way to describe them now would be progressive thrash, I guess you could say, right? And they're another band that have been absolutely killing it now for over 40 years, despite a whole bunch of lineup changes throughout. They've been credited by many for how influential they've been, especially to the technical thrash metal scene. Fantastic group. Coming in at number 12 here, I have to go with Voivod. Following that up now with my number 11, let's go with Metal Church. Some may make the case that Metal Church aren't truly thrash metal, but I would absolutely disagree with that sentiment, and, I think their early stuff, especially, is most definitely thrashy, and I've never been a fan of the whole Metal Church or more of a power metal act belief. For me personally, I just always consider them to be a thrash metal group, which is why they're on this list here. I also absolutely love their new record here, Congregation of Annihilation, the first album with new vocalist Mark Lopez in the band, who has some major shoes to fill after the untimely and unfortunate death of Mike Howe, but I think he did a killer job here on this record. It's another favorite thrash album of 2023 for me, and yeah, Metal Church, just a group I've always considered to be thrash metal more than anything else, so had to include them here close to the top 10. Coming in at number 11, let's go with Metal Church. Moving on now into the top 10, coming in at number 10, I'm going to go with Annihilator. They're the best-selling Canadian thrash metal band of all time. I think Annihilator absolutely belong here in the top 10. I mean, their debut alone, Alice in Hell, is just absolutely one of the best in thrash history, right? Incredible debut, and definitely one of the best thrash albums, period, in, thrash history, right? More than just a great debut. And as members of Canada's Big Four, they're super influential as well to the second wave of thrash acts in the late 80s and early 90s. So, very important band, in my opinion, absolutely belong in the top 10. So, getting us started here at number 10, let's go with Annihilator. Following that up now with my number 9, we have Destruction, another member of the Big Four of German thrash metal. Destruction are, one of my favorite acts of the second wave of thrash, and they also helped to pioneer black metal as well. Underrated, I think, in the grand scheme of metal, but super influential as well, and helped to pave a way, for a lot of those future black metal bands, and also being very important forces in that second wave of thrash metal. Next, at number 8, we have Sodom. They were formed by thrash metal legend Tom Angel Ripper, and they're more members of the Teutonic thrash Big Four, and were huge influences on the German black metal scene, as well as pioneering early death metal. So Very influential, of course, right? I think one of my favorite aspects of their sound is how they're able to merge death metal elements with thrash in something that was very innovative for its time, really set them apart from a lot of other thrash metal acts. So with that in mind, I had to put them in the top 10. They're my number 8, gonna go with Sodom. Here's a band that does not get half the love I feel like they deserve. Coming in at number 7 here, we have Flotsam and Jetsam. Amazing group. Thrash metal legends, have been doing it now for over 40 years and just absolutely killing it, right? Again, I think they're definitely overlooked, but, they're a band who I don't think ever made a bad record. Even when they commercialized their sound around the time of the release of Quattro, I really enjoy that stuff too, even though it's a bit of a departure from their classic sound, and I'd even argue that their more recent stuff, right, including this album right here, Blood in the Water, is, on par with some of their classic material, right? Blood in the Water, Ugly Noise, self-titled, all fantastic modern thrash classics as far as I'm concerned. So for my money, very underrated band who, are super influential to thrash metal, but just don't get the credit they deserve. So with that in mind, they're my number 7 here on the list. Gonna go with Flotsam and Jetsam. Number 6, we have Sepultura, in particular the Cavalera era of the band, and you can argue whether or not the entire Sepultura catalog is thrash, but the Cavalera era of the band is thrashy for sure, with classics like Schizophrenia, Arise, Beneath the Remains, and Chaos AD that merge thrash with death and groove metal. So it's really interesting, right? And one aspect that really made them unique in the late 80s to the early 90s, those early Sepultura records are, a testament to just how awesome Max Cavalera was to, the band, and Igor Cavalera as well, right? A tremendous drummer. So Max being one of my favorite thrash metal vocalists of all time, and his brother Igor, a killer drummer, absolutely nailing it during their tenures with the band, and Sepultura, a group that have really never been the same after the Cavalera brothers left. But, when it comes down to some of the best thrash acts of all time, I think the Cavalera era of Sepultura in particular need to be in that discussion. Coming in at number 6 here, let's go with Sepultura. Breaking into the top 5 now, let's go back to the second wave of thrash metal here with Death Angel. Fantastic group who first made their name in the San Francisco Bay Area, opening for acts like Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and more before releasing amazing records like the Ultraviolence, Frolic Through the Park, Act 3, The Art of Dying, and more. Great band, killer catalog as well. Definitely belong in the top 5 as far as I'm concerned. At number 4, we have Kreator. Their lineup has changed a whole bunch over the years, with the only consistent, constant members in the band being the great guitarist Neil Petrosa and drummer Venter. But they've always been one of the most, sonically strong acts in thrash metal. Members as well of the Teutonic Big Four, still making killer music to this day, right? Hate Uber Alles, great record in my opinion. I reviewed this for the channel when it first came out. At first, upon listening to it at first, was not a big fan of it. I think I still think side 1 is a lot stronger than side 2, but it's a record that has grown on me exponentially. I really do enjoy this record quite a bit, and when it comes down to it, it's great to hear Kreator still making great music at this level to this day. Fantastic band, pioneers for sure, and absolute thrash metal legends. My number 4 here on the list. Influenced by punk and the new wave of British heavy metal, my picks for number 3 here on the list, Overkill, were one of the more unique U.S. thrash metal bands to come out of the 1980s, still going strong today as well. And while they never reached the same level of, I guess you'd say, commercial success as some of their U.S. thrash counterparts, their distinct sound and influence on thrash cannot go understated, and maybe it's been a constant theme here throughout this video, but, again, they're a band that are doing great work still to this day, right? Scorch, their most recent album, is fantastic, another one of my favorites of 2023, so killer stuff. It's great to see Overkill still, putting out great material in 2023, and again, like I said, even though they did not reach the same level of success as some of the, more popular thrash metal acts, their influence is undeniable. So with that in mind, they kick us off here in the top 3. Number 2 has got to be Exodus, and first off, shout out to Tom Hunting, great friend of the channel, who was kind enough to talk a little bit about the early years of Exodus for the channel here, and also, a little bit about, Clive Burr and Nico McBrain. So thanks a lot to Tom Hunting. I'll leave that video linked in the comment section below. It was awesome to have him on the channel. And, when it comes down to it, Exodus are just one of the most important groups to come out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and their debut record, Bonded by Blood, is, in my opinion, the all-time best thrash metal debut album. I think Paul Bailoff just does a masterful job here on lead vocals. I think when it comes down to it, probably one of the more unsung heroes of early thrash metal, and now with Sousa on lead vocals, Zetro Sousa does, he does an incredible job as well, right? I actually had the opportunity to see Exodus live earlier this year. It was a fantastic show on a bill with Black Label Society and Anthrax and Exodus were, first on the bill, did a fantastic job, really did steal the show, I think, in a lot of aspects, so that was awesome, and, still a great live band, still making new music to this day. Persona Non Grata from 2021 was just incredible as well, so coming in at number 2 here, I have to go with Exodus. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Testament. You know, they're a band that I think a lot of people would argue should be in the Big Four anyway, but regardless of that, Testament are one of the absolute best thrash metal bands out there and have been killing it since the 80s, you know, with great records to their name like The Legacy, great debut, you know, Practice What You Preach, The New Order, Souls of Black, The Ritual. The list goes on, and I'd even say that the music they've been releasing now, post-reunion, as, you know, rivaled some of their classic work. For example, Titans of Creation is just an incredible record, in my opinion, one of the best albums they've ever made. So very exciting that they're currently working on new material for an eventual future release. I'd say probably 2024 at the soonest. So that's very exciting. I can't wait to hear what they follow up Titans of Creation with. But when it comes down to it, a fantastic band, still killing it, still making great albums that, you know, like I said, rival some of that early classic stuff. So with that in mind, my number 1 here on the list, have to go with Testament. So that wraps up this list here, counting down my top 15 favorite thrash metal bands outside of the American Big Four, which should be visible right over here. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you never miss a new upload, and let me know down in the comment section below what are some of your favorite thrash metal bands of all time. I want to hear from you, so please let me know all that good stuff down in the comments. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.